have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron.
Hello, ladies and germs.
Hey, wow, what? You need to brush off the dust on that one, you know what I'm saying?
Zing, it's cool.
Yeah, so how you been, man?
Pretty good, man.
All right, that's good. Are you ready for today's movie?
Yeah, I've been anticipating it all week, you know what I mean?
Woo-hoo.
What are we watching?
Only the breast film in the franchise.
Oh, is there titty in this one?
No, I thought you were making a boob joke.
Oh, no.
I thought because
Why did you think I was making a boob joke?
Because I was like a movie, and you're like,
movie?
oh, you said something, and I thought you said tit.
Tit? I don't know. I do have boobs on the brain 24/7. That's why we do this podcast. And get my fill my eyeballs with milky
Let's talk about Hellraiser II, Hellbound. How about it?
Oh, that's what we're watching.
So,
that's right.
yep. That's the movie we're watching, and I'm very curious because the last time we visited the Hellraiser franchise, it was actually our second episode where we did it with Vaughn. And
it was a weird one.
Yes, it was a very weird one because it was not so much we got the format nailed down, but also, like, when did we start recording that episode?
I think we started at like 2 a.m. Like, it was woo.
Well,
like,
and the
it
crazy
was the day after too.
Yes, and I feel like it's usually good and bad sometimes whenever you take like a day break as opposed to initial thoughts like we try to give. But the bad thing is too, whenever we watched it, they started it so late. Like we started watching it at 3 a.m. and finished like at 5 or something.
Yeah.
And you are not a late night person by any means of the word.
Yeah, I mean, I can do a late night every now and then, but I can only do one at a time.
Understandable. And so whenever it came to the movie, listening back from whenever I edited it, I know that you didn't have too much commentary, but mostly because you were pretty exhausted at that point since we were it was already like 2 a.m. once we started recording.
Right.
But just as a general refresher, or maybe after you've had some months to ponder on it, what's your overall thoughts on the Hellraiser franchise so far?
I mean, it's definitely one of the more like creative and out there entries into this, like the horror universe that we've watched on this podcast. It's different. It's got a cool, a lot of mixed religious themes in there, and just weird torture, and I don't know. I thought it was cool. The one thing that like really didn't get developed that I feel like does get probably developed in this one and future installments is the actual like monster dudes themselves, the four or whatever they're called.
The Cenobites.
Yeah, the Cenobites. I remember now, the John Cena bites.
Yes, that was the best line out of the entire episode.
And like they're cool, but they didn't actually play that active of a role in the last one. So I assume they get probably a little more fleshed out, at least one or two of them in this one. But
yeah, well, I won't give too much spoilers ahead for this one, but I went into this film the first time with people saying this is their favorite film of the franchise. And my own thoughts, I'll talk more about it once we get to like after watching the film. But that's kind of like the precedent I had step forward is people were telling me, oh, this is like one of the best horror sequels ever made. And I was like, whoa, well, I really like the first one. And so going in, and so yeah, I'm really curious to see how it is the second time round. And as for the development there, without giving too much away, you are correct. They do give a little bit more insight to the Cenobites, but that's all I'll say there. But I mean, aside from that, never really had any other extra experience from this, as I assume you have not otherwise, like first time, because all I remember is like the very first one. And so it's kind of like one of those things like, the horror icon, and it just kind of copies and pastes throughout it once you have like a big image like that. So Yeah, I'll be very curious to see. I'm really curious because I want to watch this film a second time just to take another look at it.
Right.
So it'll be very interesting. And now that it's not 2 a.m., I think we might be able to have a much more cohesive conversation and really dive into the whole depth of what Hellraiser 2 Hellbound has to offer.
Hell yeah, brother.
Hell yeah! And so with that said, we will be right back after we watch Hellraiser 2 Hellbound.
Oh, I thought it was Electric Boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo with Pinhead. Whoa!
Who you calling Pinhead?
Who you calling Pinhead?
No more delays, Kirsty. No more teasing. Time to play.
Time to play.
And we are back from watching Hellraiser 2 Hellbound.
That's what you needed to go get your notes for?
Yes.
To remember what
yeah.
the name of the movie?
Yeah, I forgot.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my B.
Well, yeah, they were bound to hell. That's for sure.
Yeah.
They went.
The title did not disappoint.
Yeah, sometimes the titles are incorrect.
You know, House of a Thousand Corpses, you know,
Right.
and that wasn't totally accurate there.
That was a lie. I was lied to.
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry you got lied to.
But we're returning to the norm of very accurate titles.
Yes, for sure. Definitely follow suit and giving a general synopsis and thoughts about Hellraiser 2.
Go ahead and tell me what the plot of that was.
Okay, so man, you're like holding back your ammunition. Got it. You just want to get straight to the nitty gritty details. Gotcha. No, you're good.
No, it's just about it was an interesting plot. So I'm interested in how you sum it up.
Okay. Well, Hellraiser 2
Yeah.
is a continuation of the first film.
Who would have fucking thought that, huh?
Yes, and it probably goes without saying we are going to be spoiling the first one a little bit.
Yeah, you kinda have to.
A little bit. I'll try not to spoil everything about the first one, but there's going to be some bullet points you're going to hear about.
You gotta say that Vader is Luke's father to get the last episode. Sorry,
Bro, what
spoiler
if people
alert.
what if people haven't seen Star Wars, bro?
This is a fucking terrible franchise. Don't bother.
Oh, you're right. My bad. Anyhow, with Hellraiser 2, we continue following our main protagonist from the last film, Kirsty, except she is now in a mental hospital after she has been found by the homicide detective who witnessed all the carnage that went on and her family's household in the last film.
Witness the aftermath, I should say.
Yeah, aftermath.
Yeah.
They weren't there to see the whole thing, because trust me, they wouldn't have kept Kirsty there. But with all the craziness that happened towards the end of the first film, she's kept in an asylum to be watched on, because her retelling of everything that happened in the first movie is a little unbelievable to the homicide detective.
Yeah.
And so it's from there, Kirsty also gets a message from her dad, who tells her that he's in hell. And because of this encourages her to figure out what exactly is going on, while also there's another plot of the one of the head doctors at the asylum who is also very curious about the lament configuration. And so his whole goal is he wants to unravel the secrets. And as he starts to unravel it, he starts learning way, way more than what he bargained for. And that's pretty much how the movie continues on, as Kirsty's also having to deal with that aftermath as well.
Yeah.
So, thoughts about how I told the plot?
Yeah. That's what you need to know before going into spoiler territory. That's where you start the movie. That's the context you need. And there's some good recurring characters. We have Kirsty again. She hasn't learned how to act since the last one. That's okay. That's part of the charm. We've added some new people in that also have not gone to acting school.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess we can talk about the plot before diving into characters a little bit.
Okay, well, what else?
Plot-wise, as you were very curious as to how the continuation would build upon the first one.
Yeah.
And when it comes to building upon the first one, do you think the film was successful in that?
Oh, yeah. I do think that was a success. They did manage to continue from where they left off and do it in a way that I felt like made sense and still had appropriate tension, given the events of the first one. And even, continued and built upon the conflicts of the first one. So, the film did that well.
Mm-hmm. Which is good. It's definitely good. I feel like it felt like very natural story-wise on what would happen, because towards the end of the film, you don't really get, like... it's not a situation where it's one and done, like, there's no way you could build a sequel from it, because... Right. The lament configuration is still out there at large. Mm-hmm. And so it totally makes sense that someone else would be obsessed with it and want to learn its secrets and everything else.
Right.
And as for Kirsty, I feel like it's fairly natural, although it is funny that, and I guess we'll talk about this in characters, her boyfriend is not there anymore. It's like mentioned briefly, like, oh yeah, we got the boyfriend's testimony.
He left hours ago.
Yeah, left hours ago, which, to be fair, he didn't even have that much of an impression in the first film, so I can't say I was really, like, bummed out to miss it. But yeah, I mean, I guess you can't really talk too heavily about the plot without going into spoilers, so... Right. Well, let's talk about Kirsty, as you mentioned. I know you're pretty much like about her.
I think she's compelling to a degree. She's like budget Winona Ryder. You know what I mean?
I believe that. Yeah, I can see that. I like Kirsty a ton. Like Ashley Lawrence, who plays her, does an incredibly well job playing as her, and I really liked her a ton in the first film. This film, I felt like she was more of a caricature. Like, it just didn't... didn't...
Yeah, what do you mean?
So, like, I feel like... I'm trying to think of this. So, I feel like she was a little bit more in-depth of a character in the first one, but maybe it's just because of the situation that she's put in where you experience more turmoil. Mm-hmm. I feel like with this one, even though I felt like she did an okay performance, I felt like it was more great value Kirsty, if that makes sense, performance-wise. Yeah. Like, I feel like whenever it came to it, like, I just never... bought her acting this time round, kind of like you mentioned.
Well, there are several characters I fell into that category. Mm-hmm. Coale being the biggest perpetrator of
what?
Jesus Christ!
that by the way, that was totally not planned. It was just we both had the same wavelength there.
Well, that must have been written in the script like 20 times for him because it was his favorite line, and he never quite understood how to deliver it any time. He was just like, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry for scaring you.
No. Yeah, I feel like William Hope, who played him, I don't know what it is. He felt like a mix of Michael Keaton and Billy Crystal mixed together. There's something about it.
I could see that.
Yeah, like somehow a mishmash of them. And whenever it came to his performance, like, it's one of those things that I don't hate him, but just the way he acted, I felt like he was forced to be exposition the character or help Kirsty out, be the one to be like, oh yeah, I believe ya.
I felt like his character was terribly written, and the actor didn't, like, because he was given bad material, just didn't, like, do anything to make it his own, and it was just like this dude. I don't know. There's like, I don't think this is even spoilers, but there's like a weird, he has like a love interest with Kirsty, which is weird.
That was very weird.
Has her doctor, and it just immediately it starts. He's just like, oh, you, like, I'm gonna start hitting on you.
Yes, it was very, very, very strong. Although it is very funny because it's not even like plutonic.
No,
like not entirely. It's not like, she's, highly against it, but at the same point, she's not like, you never hear her talk about Coale. Like, where's Coale?
Right. She's seeing like visions of her father like getting tortured in hell, and she's just like, yeah, I care about that, not a romance with this fucking weird doctor guy.
yeah, and it's one of those things where she's only going along because
he's gonna help her out.
Yeah, help her out, and he's the only person that believes her because everyone else thinks she's spouting off craziness and stuff. So, yeah, I feel like, again, Coale, it's like, I like him, but there isn't too much to him. Like, it wasn't, like, annoying by any means, but, and to be fair, he was unintentionally funny, because there's one moment whenever he's figuring out exactly that Kirsty was telling the truth, and again, he just says, Jesus Christ, like 3 times in a row, and he's just like, what the hell is this? You know, kind of like, whoa,
There's a scene where he's digging around, the head doctor guy's office and discovering things. And he's just, you could tell he's been given the task to like, all right, act like your mind's really getting blown. And he's like, all right, I got this. And he's just looking at stuff going, Jesus Christ.
Well, and the crazy thing too is it's not even that grotesque or anything. It's just lots of lament configurations there.
That's the part that really didn't sell me on it, is because he's walking by. There's like a glass case with like a realistic body in it. I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be a prop or like actually somebody's body. There's like a bloody mattress with hooks in it. You know, he's like looking at all this shit, and the things he decides to say Jesus Christ about are these little puzzle boxes in glass jars. Like that's what's freaking me out. Like, oh Jesus Christ, this guy likes Rubik's cubes. Like, that's what's worrying you.
Yeah, and he's just looking through the papers and saying that, but doesn't react at all to the bloody mattress with hooks on it. And so it was just one of those things where it just gets into the funny territory where I'm just laughing at it, and I honestly don't think it was supposed to be comedic, but it was just so funny, just him overreacting to such minute stuff.
There was a lot of little moments with Kyle that I don't think were supposed to be funny. The one of the ones is where Kirsty's like peeking into some room, and Kyle puts his hand on her shoulder and scares her, and she jumps, and he waits like a full like 30 seconds before he's like, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to scare you. And it reminded me of like porn acting.
One of my favorite bits is whenever Kirsty is determined like she's going to go over to Dr. Chenard's house, that he goes, wait right here. I'm going with you. And he like steps out of frame and then jumps back in and just
with
says
no
that.
explanation as to why. He's like, wait just a second. And he goes and he like jerks off for 2 seconds and then comes back. All right, now I'm ready. Like,
and so it was just weird moments like that kind of make me question the overall direction of this film. And it was one of those things that I was honestly not prepared for in the slightest whenever it came to it, which it's not directed by Clive Barker this time round. It said it's directed by Tony Randall, and the screenplay's by Peter Atkins. And it's based off the story of Clive Barker.
Right.
So it's one of those things I feel like, whenever they're adopting source material, because this sequel clearly did not come from the book at all. This is pretty much beyond that and making a franchise out of it. And so I just feel like the decisions it makes, some parts it makes sense on why they went, but then the way they got there is more so questioning.
It's shambled together parts. You could tell they had like places they needed to be, and they were just like, connect the dock here, and it's kind of, it falls apart in certain places.
No,
some of my favorite parts is where they just like didn't film a part or something, and they just like jump cut, and it's just like, there's a part where somebody screams and then jump cut and they're hanging off a cliff. And it's like, how did that happen?
Oh, gosh. Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And there were several moments like that in the movie where they were just like, which was disappointing, because something I feel like the first Hellraiser did really well was show a lot of practical effects. Where it's like, here's a cool thing that's happening. And this, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of cool practical effects.
Yeah.
But I feel like they thought of like the aesthetic and then didn't think of like the practical effects. You know, like, okay, we need to show this happening in the scene. Instead, they were just like, oh, the camera will look at something else, and then it's a different thing.
Yeah. Understandable. Yeah, I definitely understand what you're talking about, because I felt like the use of practical effects was well done in the first film. This film, not too much. There are like some moments where I'm like, okay, that was kind of nifty, but yeah, definitely not as much as the first one. I feel like the practical effects just blew this one's practical effects out of the water easily for me personally. But yeah, and we keep talking about Dr. Chenard, so why don't we talk about good old Kenneth Cranham?
I knew his last name was Cranham. I didn't realize it was Kenneth. Dr. Kenneth Cranham.
Yep.
I like to lick people's brains.
Yep. So Dr. Chenard and his obsession with lament configuration, I feel like it makes sense because with Kirsty, I feel like just having her be the sole proprietor kind of screwing around with the lament configuration, even though she does end up kind of doing so later.
Right.
I feel like this was more important because with Dr. Chenard kind of in the mix, he's going to kind of be the one causing problems, kind of like how Julia was the one causing problems in the first film.
Sure.
And so, speaking of which, I feel like we can't mention this character without, again, we've already said spoilers for the first one, but I'm telling you now, spoilers for the first Hellraiser film.
Yeah.
But Dr. Chenard ends up getting obsessed after coming across the bloody mattress that Kirsty somehow knows already, which I find very kind of convenient that she knows exactly how everything works. And I know
There's
she...
a lot of stuff like that.
Because she didn't have time to process enough of the stuff going on towards the end of the film because everything's
Right.
kind of colliding in all at once to know that the blood stain on the mattress that Julia died on would be able to resurrect her.
Yeah, they give her some random exposition about that fact. She's like, it must be able to have her resurrect just like Frank. And Frank came back somehow. Because she didn't even really witness that.
She didn't even witness that. So I'm like...
She's like making an educated guess, but with very little education, but she's saying it so confidently, like, oh, you gotta destroy that mattress.
No, for sure. And Dr. Chenard is somehow able to grab a hold of that mattress, blood and hooks and all, and drag it back to his place, to where he is then able to bring Julia back.
Right.
And so I don't think that's a bad plot device. I feel like it's an understandable one. So that way you're bringing back a character who kind of knows stuff. And I do, again, you look at her transformation throughout the first film, and Julia kind of came from just kind of like a snotty person to downright evil towards the very end of the film. Right. So bringing her back to be kind of another form of the antagonist, I feel like is a logical step there. And I feel like will provide extra insight to Dr. Chenard, who's trying to learn more about hell and the lament configuration, and Julia, who already has been in hell. Right. Experiencing all that. So I feel like that's a very natural thing. But with Dr. Chenard himself, I feel like he's fine. That's pretty much all I could say about it. He doesn't do a terrible job, but it wasn't like a gripping performance. There's only like a couple of lines that I'm like, okay, that was pretty well delivered, but that's really all I could give. And as this character progresses on later, that's where I start to have a couple of issues.
Yeah, if you didn't know anything about this movie, all you have to do is imagine any doctor in any movie made in the last century, and that's the character.
Yes,
I'm a white guy who talks like this.
Yes, that is probably the most accurate description you could give Dr. Chenard for Hellraiser 2. Is he's pretty much just any doctor you'd see in any film easily.
It's like they had a dude that they were just like, all right, you're going to be doctors and everything. And those were like the same people every decade that play doctors in movies.
Yeah, it got typecast as doctors.
Yeah. You've got a deep voice and you sound kind of British and you're an old white guy. You're a doctor. Congratulations.
And so I feel like just watching him throughout the film, I was never invested or connected with what he was doing, but it was just more so like, okay, we're with this dude.
I thought I did think it was an interesting way to carry the plot along. Somebody had to bring Julia back, and he's the one that did it, and that really serves as a catalyst for the plot going forward after that, and like the conflict going forward after that. So I thought it was interesting, but yeah, I mean, his character is more of a plot device than anything. And he's prominently featured, and he does a decent job, but his role is to bring Julia back and then be strung along by her to some extent.
Yes, absolutely. And we might as well talk about the return of Julia. And I don't know. It's like one of those things that, like, watching it, it's kind of like Kirsty. I loved her performance in the first film, and I thought Julia did a really good performance in the first film. But somehow, like, this sequel, it feels like their performances are a little watered down.
I think honestly, I'd just say that's probably a product of what they were given, the material, because I just feel like it was weaker and more to work with. But
Yeah, and it's not to say Kirsty or Julia were, like, absolutely terrible train wreck to watch.
No.
But it was just kind of like, yeah, it's pretty good. But I feel like Julia, again, kind of serves the purpose of the plot to be evil. It was kind of getting to see her be all fleshy and everything else. And again, it is kind of interesting to see her be, like, again, openly antagonistic, because she really didn't get to that point until the very end of the first Hellraiser.
right, she was sort of Heidi kind of thing, and then this movie, she's just like evil. She's back from hell.
Yeah, definitely more malevolent.
Yeah,
And it.
And more of a monster too, because I mean, obviously the first movie, the monster is Frank, right? Because he's this goopy, guy who's trying to get his skin and body back and get fed corpses. I mean, that's the plot of that movie. This movie is just like, she's back and she's all fucking just muscles and blood, and it's cool, and she's like just interacting with this doctor dude that's helping her.
No, I think that's definitely true overall for that. And I wish I could say more, but really it would either be spoiling stuff she does in the later part of the film, and so I feel like we've already kind of nailed that down. Now, let's talk about the return of the Cenobites. Okay. I forgot Jesus is in this film.
Jesus. Yeah, he's well, you can't talk about hell without talking about heaven, baby.
Yeah, so
he comes down and he absolves them of all their sins, and they live a happy ending. That's the movie.
Yeah. Apparently they're releasing a version for the churches called Hellraiser.
Holy moly! That's why he says Jesus Christ so much, is he's actually talking to Jesus Kyle every time. He's just like, Jesus Christ, what do you think about these boxes? He's like, oh, those are crazy, man.
I love your Jesus impersonation.
Yeah, that's what he'd sound like.
I hope you're not wrong. Oh my gosh. So we have the Cenobites return towards the middle of the film, and I will say, just like in the first film, they have such a crazy cool entrance. The music is just orchestral, strong, everything's shaking, and you see their silhouettes as they march out, and it's cool. Although it was funny because the reveal of Pinhead, they made it even bigger. Because you have them like all like march out, and then you hear Pinhead's voice, and then the orchestra is like blasted to 11 there, and the slow motion reveal. So I thought it was pretty cool to see them, and
you even kind of get like a little more like background on them in this movie, like a little flavor.
Yes,
so.
I'm sure you were happy that you had a tiny bit more context about them.
It was cool. I mean, they even give you some of it in the beginning. There's like a scene that I won't really describe too much until spoiler territory, but yeah, they show Pinhead like getting made almost. It's cool.
No, it was definitely pretty cool to see that, and again, I feel like it's kind of like the first film where they're not in it a whole lot.
Right.
They just kind of appear, and you don't really get to know a lot of their characters too much. It's mostly Pinhead that you get to know a little bit more about.
Right.
And
he's
so
usually the one talking, yeah,
but just to acknowledge them, they look cool, they act cool, they're just cool. They're
cool
very
design,
yes, they're very cool individuals, and I'll be excited to kind of talk about more of what's revealed about them. But I feel like they're about the only ones that I feel like from the first film are still fairly consistent. Maybe if I'm still comparing performances, I'd still rank like the first film's performances much better. And it's not the fact they do bad this time round. Again, I just feel like it's just more watered down, like, you know, they weren't heavily directed properly, I feel like, anyways, because I feel like, you know, knowing acting, there's been times where I thought an actor was terrible, then I see them in another film and they're fantastic.
Right. I mean,
So,
a lot of
yeah.
acting is the product of editing, is the product of directing. It's how did the director want you to say these lines? What lines were you given to say in the first place? And then what cuts did they pick to put in the movie? You know, that can all determine. Some director's vision might just be a fucking shit vision. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you had some banger delivery in there, and they just didn't take those ones because they were like, oh, you had too much emotion in there. I want you to be.
Yeah, and so I feel like that's kind of been the flaw of this film, is that the characters we meet, it's like, even if they get development, it's not enough to make them like super duper deep. And
That's true. And I think once you hit a certain point in the movie, like, you're bouncing around so much from like scene to scene and action to action and conflict to conflict that there's just not a whole lot that they don't give you a lot of time to develop anything once you start really getting into the action of this movie.
For sure, I definitely agree. And one final character I will mention, even though there's not too much to mention, is the girl Tiffany, who's solving all the puzzles. And overall, I thought she did well.
Right. It's hard whenever you're given a role where your character is, you do not talk, but you solve puzzles. That's the character.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that I wouldn't say she's like, oh, so deeply compelling, even though they try to develop her character a bit. But I feel like the actress does a fine job with the script she's given and is able to express it. Like, I believe that she was disturbed in a sense to why she would not say a single word. And you know, I was rooting for her to succeed almost more than Kirsty, which was surprising. Not to say I disliked Kirsty, but again, I just was a little bit more attached. And I'll kind of like mention it because there's one scene that I was kind of concerned about Tiffany about there and how that was going to go, which I guess we could talk more about in spoilers. Whenever it comes to that scene in particular. But
I do agree. I feel like it's easier to have sympathy for Tiffany. She's sort of drugged into this, whereas like Christy was drugged into it in the first movie, and now she's like heavily involved in this movie. You
absolutely.
know what I mean? But so Tiffany's more the innocent bystander. Well, I guess Kyle's also kind of innocent, but we don't like Kyle.
Yeah. Well said.
He also stuck his nose where it didn't belong, and one of those places was Kirsty. Sticking his nose all in her.
Definitely, for sure. Just a shushing of the lips. Doing that, but it is kind of interesting to see this sequel and having these pre-established characters interact with one another, because there is a moment where Kirsty runs into the Cenobites, and I do love the exchange with them, even though I feel like there are a lot of decisions the Cenobites make that are questionable during that moment, which we'll dive more, but I did love the exchange that as soon as they see Kirsty, they're like, oh, hey, Kirsty, what's up?
What's up? Long time no see.
Yeah, it was just kind of like a casual thing. But yeah, that scene was very interesting, and I'm sure I'll talk more heavily into spoilers since it deals with the crazy unraveling plot
Slap
that
me some
occurs.
Skin, Kirsty. You get it?
Get it?
Skin.
Gonna rip skin off. But yeah, and I feel like we've already kind of talked a little bit about practical effects. I feel like they're still pretty good in this film. I still think the first film, again, it's more refined. I feel like, as opposed to this one where there were some moments that I'm like,
Yeah, I do feel like they had a lot of things they wanted to show, and they showed all of them. Nothing got left on the cutting room floor.
Yes.
Surely there were things that did, but it just felt like they were like, oop, and look at this spitting pillar of flesh, and oh, we paid a lot of money to put this together, so look at these eyeballs for some reason, you know, like, just like, you look at them. But whenever it came to, like, actual, like, meaningful exchanges, there were a few scenes that were, like, lacking. You know what I mean?
No,
and I could talk more about those in spoilers too. But.
Yeah, for sure. And as I mentioned before, the music, just like in the first one, I feel like it's hit out of the park overall. Just I love the music they use for the Hellraiser, just kind of like that more orchestral theme
Yeah, I mean,
going
it's
on,
definitely,
and the choir
yeah,
and violins. It's just all very well done.
it does
So
set the mood for something grand and otherworldly, which
yeah,
is this movie.
so I have to give major props to Christopher Young for that.
Thanks, Mr. Young.
Yeah, you're swell.
Yeah, he's probably old now, though.
I think so. Let me.
He's Christopher Old.
God, I'm so stupid. I just got that joke. God dang. Yep. He born in 57, so still around.
Wow,
Yeah, how about that?
it's crazy.
Yeah, super crazy. Speaking of crazy, are there any other crazy pros or cons you want to mention about the film?
I feel like you don't always have to talk about editing, but I do want to mention the editing of this movie.
Yeah,
'cause
go
it was,
ahead.
It was interestingly done.
Mm-hmm.
It's really I feel like if you're talking about editing and you're not like a film editor person, it's probably because there was some things that you noticed and you really shouldn't be noticing the editing. But yeah, there were quite a few like jump cuts and like awkward transitions between scenes here that I thought was interesting, but it did add to the camp, I guess, of the movie. It does feel a little more like, I don't know. I don't even want to say lower budget because I feel like they probably spent a lot of money on all those practical effects.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of with you. I feel like whenever it comes to the artistic value of this film, I feel like they definitely amped it up. Like, because whenever they do go to hell, I do like how they personified it, because I feel like we've seen way too many times the character, the stereotypical, that's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
The
fire and brimstone.
Yes,
and,
the red pitchforks, devils. And so it's interesting to see this take of hell just being more gray and like a labyrinth going through. Although there are a lot of weird turns they go through, which I don't know the reason of and why it was there.
But I do feel like a lot of it was just either like lore packing or like, just showing, because like hell in this universe is like a very strange place, and it's not straightforward. Time for you to be tortured by little devils with pitchforks or whatever. It's like this weird mix of like pleasurable sin and punishing sin, and it's ultimately an awful experience because it's hell, but they're really creative in the way they showcase it, and the whole thing does feel a lot more like mythology than I feel like a lot of other depictions of hell do.
So I really like that aspect of it, which is honestly probably one of my favorite things about the film is the fact that I feel like the style that they do have and design overlay for hell, just kind of building upon the Cenobite mythology and everything else, is so unique and creative. And that's something I admired in the first film, was like the style and creativity of it. But the problem with this film is that I feel like, again, it's like we talked about with House of a Thousand Corpses, you feel like it has like a lot of style and attitude, but just not as much substance.
Right.
Yeah,
it's
all style, no substance, was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like eating one of those like cakes that's 90% fondant, but it looks like a realistic unicorn or something, and you're like, oh, that's fucking awesome. And then you go to eat it, and you're like, wow, this fucking sucks.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel with this film. And editing-wise, yeah, there's definitely a lot of weird editing shots. Not as much that bothered me with Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses, since it was so jump cutty everywhere. But yeah, it was weird for this kind of film to have jump cuts as it did.
Yeah, and you could tell some of them were just like not stylistic choices. They were just like they didn't film it right or whatever, and then the editor's sitting down with the clips, and they were like, well, shit, I guess we're just gonna hop over to this scene now, like,
yeah.
We're gonna use this shot because this is what I got,
No, for sure. It definitely felt like they tried to make the most out of the scenes, which I'm not sure if they were running out of money, because there's one scene of like Kirsty and Tiffany running down the hall, and it's like the same hallway. If you notice that, like they're in the exact same place, even though they're trying to make it feel like an endless labyrinth.
Right.
So at that point, I'm like, I feel like I'm just staring at the exact same set they've been on, just trying to translate that they're somewhere different.
I saw those stone hallways so many times in this movie. It was just like, it's the same hallway.
And you're just like, okay, I'm done with this. Yeah, that definitely was a little bit sad that, you know, Hell was both cool and pretty generic.
Yeah, because it's weird. I have a weird mixed feeling about it, because I do feel like they did a good job of showcasing that it's a massive labyrinth and it's a crazy, you know, you never know what you're going to see around whatever the next corner. But at the same time, I feel like they did a terrible job doing that, because we spent so much time and so many pivotal scenes were spent in either that little stone hallway or like on top of the stone hallway, you know what I mean?
Yes, for sure. Definitely, like, they could have explored more venues, but you know, probably budget and time didn't allow for it. So I definitely agree there, that it was very a bizarre sort of sequence of events trying to follow the film through. Yeah. And so aside from that, was there any other tidbits you got?
No, sir.
Okay, well, no worries. I think I'm pretty much out of ideas to talk about before spoilers. So, Aaron, why don't you take us off with a rating of Hellraiser II Hellbound?
Wow, Hellraiser II Hellbound. Honestly, this is gonna sound a little harsh, but I want you, before you guys hear my rating, to factor in that I do think a lot of the things that were interesting, unique, positive, cool beans about this movie really were things that were established in the first movie and just kind of copied over. So I'm just not giving them a lot of credit for that. You know what I mean? So the Cenobites are cool. Some of the actors are cool type. You know, Julia's cool, the lore is cool, you know, the music's cool, but all of that shit was in Hellraiser 1. They just had to copy-paste that over, and then, you know, so what did this film really add on top? There was some good stuff, and I'm excited to talk about that in spoilers, but overall, like, you know, this is kind of not a great movie. It was fun to watch. It's not a very good, objective piece of cinematography, if you want to, if you're trying to slap it in that vault. Not that, you know, we are, but if I had to rate it through the lens of, you know, I'm at the Library of Congress with every movie, and they ask me to rate movies on a scale of 1 to 10. It's just like, all right, what are these pieces gonna? I would give this one like a 3. This is like a 3. I was tempted to do 2. Because it's Hellraiser 2. I do think there are, you know, some redeeming aspects and some things that it actually does really, really well. It's just there's an overwhelming amount of things that it does really, really poorly that sort of drag it down for me. So yeah, I give Hellraiser 2 a 3.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone with this one. So, coming off the high that is Hellraiser 1, my experience whenever it came to watching the sequel, especially hearing people be like, this is my favorite one of the franchise, everyone really praising this film, I was really excited to watch it. And whenever I watched it the first time, I was like, okay.
All right.
And it wasn't even like Friday the 13th Part 2, where I felt like, you know, there was still like some fun campy bits, even though it wasn't too terribly great. It's like I enjoyed seeing Jason run through the film, but even in Hellraiser 2, like my favorite aspects of the first film are just so watered down. Like Kirsty isn't given that much gripping stuff, even though I feel like they tried to, and I don't feel like it's even the actress's fault about it. I just feel like, again, it's just more of the direction of the film is a little bit lost. And even the Cenobites, again, they're super cool, and learning more about them is kind of super cool, but it, without spoiling anything, I almost feel like the secret of them kind of took away the mystique of it. And I feel like that was also kind of a letdown, but I do understand the direction, so it's not like a hard slap. But I don't know. I feel bad for people that really love this film. I think it's great that they do. For me, the first time through, I didn't like it. Second time through, it was even more harder to swallow.
Really?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, I'm really interested to get kind of your what levels you downloaded of it since you've seen it the first time, and since it's such a weird, complicated movie. If there was just more you got in, or if it's just even more jumbled.
It's not more jumbled. It's like, you know, that one place everyone tells you to go to have food at, like, oh man, if you love Chinese food, you need to check out this place. This place is like the king of Chinese food. And you're like, okay, and you go there and eat. You're like, oh, okay, this wasn't really what I expected. It's fine. It's Chinese food for sure.
Yeah,
it's just fine. I don't really want it.
Sure.
And then you think about it, you're like, well, was it just me? Yeah. Did I miss something about it? Right. And then you order the same thing again at a later date, and it's just, man, this is even worse than what I expected, because you were really thinking, surely
there's just on a bad day.
Yes, for sure. And, you know, maybe I had my expectations too high for this film, because again, I rated the first Hellraiser a 9 just because of like the style and attitude and drive of the story and the characters. Just everything about it lined up so much better. And I feel like with this film, just watching through again, it was harder to swallow. It wasn't even like Friday the 13th Part 2, where I could just sit through and I'm like, yep, know all the beats, and it's exactly what it was. This one was just definitely, the boring scenes to me felt even more boring. And the scenes I have problems with were just kind of, so with that in mind, again, there are cool aspects, and I did enjoy, again, a lot of the creativity. Cenobites are still looking cool as ever. There's still parts of it I like a ton, and so it's not like one of those things that I hated it, but it's like I'm sitting between like a 3 and a 4 as well. I might give it a 4 just because of the good gold nuggets they have throughout, where I was like, okay, I really like what they did there. I think that's great, and I would want to see it again and again. But yeah, it was definitely harder for me to sit through the second time. And again, the other gold nugget that kind of helps boost it a bit is the philosophy of Hellraiser that goes behind there, that I really find enticing. But there's a lot of good and bad that I need to talk about in spoilers, because there's definitely some big fish I need to fry in that regard. So if I had to be on a generous day, probably a 4, but like 3.5. So I'm with you there, Aaron. And again, I'm sorry for everyone that really likes Hellraiser 2. I think it's great you're able to enjoy it. It's just something that, especially since I love the first film so much, I feel like this hurts the second film especially.
And I get why people would think it's fun in like a campy sort of way, because it's definitely that. I've definitely had a lot of laughs in places that probably weren't intended to be laughable, but like, although some of them I feel like were intended to be laughable. And it was just, I feel like I would give The Room a 1 out of 10, but I will watch that movie any day. Because the point is that it's so bad it's good. And I feel like this is like, some of the parts in this movie that are bad enough to watch again, and I get why you would be like, this is a bad movie, but I love it because look at these guys, and look at this doctor, and he's got a thing in him, and he's shooting out little tentacles, you know, like and I get that, but it's still it's a 3.
Yeah, for sure. And that might be why, like with Friday the 13th Part 2, objectively, it's not a great film, but I still feel like there was like bits of like uniqueness that is different from the first one that I was able to enjoy, even though I enjoyed the first one much more than the second one. So I feel like it's hard to be a sequel and not compare it to the previous films, because I feel like that's the point of sequels, is to kind of look and compare and contrast on their journey where the characters are at. And so I feel kind of bad rating it low a bit, but like the most I'm willing to give is like a 4. Like this is one that I gotta be honest, like they have a Blu-ray copy and I already own it on DVD, but I was just like, I don't need to rebuy this one. You know, I'm good unless they come out with like a 4K Hellraiser collection of all the films. not looking to rebuy this one specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that in mind, we will be jumping into spoilers. So this is your cue to get on out before we dive deeper into this one hell of a mess. Am I saying that right, or am I saying that right?
Why don't you Cenobite me?
Okay, why don't we talk about spoilers?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna get some water real quick.
Okay, I will let you take a water break.
Whew.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Once you're in hell, you just
Oh, it's hot as hell in here. Let me tell you what.
yeah. We're going to Hellraiser II, Hellbound.
I
We're
wish I
Hellbound.
had a
Woo-hoo.
razor to kill myself.
So there's plenty of spoilers to talk about, but
so
what's
many.
one spoiler you really want to talk about first?
I never have like the most important spoiler to say first, but I'm gonna go ahead and whip out the one I'm dying to talk about.
Ooh.
And it's why, if they were taking this movie seriously at all, they chose to make the mute person's first words shit.
I mean, that was one of the highlights for me.
It was really funny, and I felt like, okay, they probably meant for that to be funny, but at the same time, that's where for me to realize that the film didn't take itself seriously at all at like the last 5 minutes is like a weird place. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. And it's funny because the first time I watched it, I completely forgot about that scene. But watching it with you, it stuck out, and maybe it's just because a lot of the slower moments I don't quite enjoy were really kind of even more tiring.
Mm-hmm.
That by the point she says, "Holy shit," it's just kind of like a breath of fresh air. It's like, okay,
Thank God she said something.
yeah. And if it's going to be your first words, it's going to be something shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
it's just they had that scene right before where she was like struggling to say something to what's her name? Fucking the other girl,
Kirsty.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
She's trying to say something to Kirsty, and then she couldn't, and they end up just hugging, and then like 30 seconds after that, she's like, shit.
I just love how that's the straw that broke the camel's back on the vow of silence.
And I understand being shocked and just saying shit. I get it, but like, she had already gone through hell at that point.
Yeah.
Literally seen some shit, and that's the moment where she was spooked into being like, "Oh, holy shit!"
That is true. She definitely saw a lot, and seeing Dr. Chenard as a Cenobite. Oh, yeah. I think I'd be saying that. I'm pretty sure I said that too. Maybe that's why I didn't hear it the first time, because. Oh, that's probably one of my biggest gripes about the film.
Is the doctor turned into a Cenobite?
Oh my gosh! Oh,
He's not a very cool looking Cenobite.
no, he's not.
And that's why I don't give this film that many creativity points. They did a lot of creative stuff right.
Yeah.
But for stuff like that, whenever it comes to like the character design of the monsters or whatever, you can tell. The original Cenobites are cool because they were cool in the first movie. They just copied that design, and then whenever they had to make a new one, you could see what happened.
Yeah, it's
looking motherfucker.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Except I take Urgot any day of the week times 12 over that, because so to give context for people that don't care about spoilers, I suppose Cenobite, what are you talking about? So. The whole thing with Dr. Chenard is he's wanting to explore hell, which is why he brings back Julia, because she's in hell, and so he's wanting to use her basically as a guide to tell her more about it and try to figure out how to open the gates, which is why he's able to bring Tiffany, who's solving puzzles. And I'll talk about one good thing before I really start getting annoyed about the Cenobite bit, is whenever they bring Tiffany in to solve the puzzle, I feel like that's a perfect plot device. She's just
I love that.
mentally disturbed, and it's just solve this puzzle. Okay. Right. And so whenever they do that and summon the Cenobites, as Julia and Dr. Chenard are watching from a distance as they're waiting for hell to open, so that way they can slip in, that the Cenobites are coming out and they're getting ready to kill Tiffany, and then it's Pinhead going, "Wait." And he just comes out and he's like,
It is not her hands that have summoned us, but rather desire.
Yeah, that part was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool moment, and again, a cool ideology that it's not only just, oh, you open the box and you're there. It's just the desire to want to open the box. And with Tiffany, she doesn't necessarily care about what's in the box. She's just like, okay, puzzle.
Right.
And it's more so Dr. Chernard's will that's having the Cenobites arrive.
Right, which is also
specifically
cool
for
because
them.
like it shows that the rules aren't so rigid and that the Cenobites are like thinking individuals. You know what I mean? That they come in and they're like, okay, you can't just, that's not a loophole, you dumb doctor. Like, we're coming for you.
Yeah, they're so flippant with their rules. That's a crazy thing because when it's so funny because it's not so much like a Freddy situation or, you know, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, where they're like, okay, I'm coming after you no matter what.
Right.
They're like sound individuals who more than likely are going to come after you. I mean, heck, in the first film, you know, whenever Kirsty's like, oh, Frank escaped, you need to deal with him, and so they go after him, and then once that's resolved, they're like, oh yeah, we're also going for you. I feel like that's just one of those things that they're like, well, we're here, you technically opened the box, went through, and so that's kind of an interesting aspect. But then I guess in this one, because I guess there's zero desire for Tiffany to want to see what's inside the lament configuration,
Right.
it nullifies it, so it's interesting to see them as thinking individuals. And so with Dr. Chernard slipping through hell itself, it is kind of interesting that, again, it feels like a lot of these times these people that want to discover something dark or evil, once they get into the midst of it, they usually are like, I don't know about this. You know, they start getting scared, which is understandable going through. And you could tell, like, Julia's eating this up. And then I guess it's revealed that Julia was allowed to come back to turn Dr. Chernard into a Cenobite. I don't understand how that's different from Frank being brought back, but maybe I guess she talked to Leviathan, the basically, I guess, the overlord devil of the underworld.
The big
I guess
spinning crystal in the sky.
Yes, exactly. It's just very kind of confusing, which again, I feel like just for the amount of lore they try to hint at, I felt like they should have said more.
Yeah, I guess for the amount of exposition they put in this movie to describe every little step that they're not going to show on camera and decide to tell instead, yeah, they do have a surprising lack of explaining what the fuck is going on in hell.
No, for sure. And even, it's like they're so flippant on their stuff because, like, whenever the Cenobites meet Kirsty and they're just like, hello, you know, and they're about to tear up again and they're like, oh, you can't escape us this time.
Right.
You know, we got you. And she's like,
I've got information.
Yeah, no, that was the second time.
Yeah.
This is the... I don't know how to feel about that scene. We'll talk about that one. But the first time, it's so weird because it's like she's in hell and she's like, I need to find my father. And he's like, your father is suffering in hell. And it's like,
she's like in a different hell. Or
oh,
whatever.
different hell. That's what it is.
And she's
okay.
like, no, I'm gonna go find him, and you know,
and
that's what the Frank plot point is about. Is that because it wasn't her father this whole time that was saying like, I'm trapped in hell, help me. It was Frank the whole time.
Okay, that makes more sense because like I thought they were like also thinking that her father was in hell, which I guess he is. It's just in a different castle.
Right. That's what. That's exactly how they explain. Because Pinhead is like, no, your father's in his own hell, or like suffering his own hell right now, or whatever. And so like implying that he wasn't here. She's like, no, I know he's here because he was writing messages to me or whatever. But yeah, that was Frank. And remember, it makes sense because Frank even stole his skin in the first movie. So it understands why she would be confused of the two that are in hell or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's a smart plot point they place right there. I guess for me, it was just not spoken clearly, which again, I'm sure they're just trying to tease the audience also into thinking that she's about to find her father.
A lot of this was like rapid fire too, because that whole Frank scene like should have been the big climax crescendo, but it turns out there was like 5 of those, and they had to get rid of Frank real quick. I guess he popped up and then he was dead within 5 minutes. It was like, okay.
Yeah, it was kind of underwhelming for how cool of a scene they set up. Just the candles everywhere. They have like that stained glass door that leads to it. The bodies popping in and out of holes.
Right. And making little moaning sounds, and they explain like, 'cause she opens the door to this house, this stained glass door. That's her dad's house. Expects to find her dad in here, but no, it's Frank. Because remember, Frank also lived in that house while he was doing all kinds of debauchery, and that's why there's this little morgues of bodies popping out. And he explains even that like, oh, they tempt me or whatever. She pulls the sheet off of one of them, and there's no woman under there. But
yeah, but the defeat of Frank was very anticlimactic reasoning.
Like, what the fuck? It was like Phantom Menace shit, where they're just like, turn off all the robots. She's like, I'm just gonna, I know to throw this cloth into the candles, and the whole place catches on fire, and you burn in hell.
Yeah, and I guess the photo of Frank, because it's burning, like that also destroys him.
Yeah.
It just was. I feel like it's a cool idea and concept. That's also another thing I feel like. They have cool concept ideas, just not the greatest executions.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I feel like there was nothing that hinted at that happening. You know what I mean? Like, if they had... And photos play a big part in this movie, because you remember she gets that photo out of the doctor's little stash of secrets about hell or whatever, because she looks like the Cenobite, and then later she shows it to Pinhead and is like, this is you. And somehow she figured out just from looking at this photo that it was
dude, that was such leaps and bounds that I would have had the worst time figuring that out.
But you see that like photos are important to this plot, but they just didn't explain it like at all. So like I don't know if that was supposed to be the same thing, if she figured out that like photos are tied to the soul somehow, and like if they had explained that would be cool, and then later on she burns the photo and it burns Frank, it would like make sense. But since they didn't do that, it doesn't make any sense.
I just feel like they do like a lot of stuff that's like, oh wow, that looks cool, but I don't feel like it's like the lighthouse on what does it mean. I just feel like it's just poorly explained. Like, Kirsty goes through her own version of hell where she's back in the house and sees pictures of her mom, and then blood starts pouring everywhere. Then her mom's pictures are replaced by Julia. Dresser falls over, cockroaches are spilling out, and then she's back. Same idea with Tiffany, where she goes to the Hellraiser circus top there and goes through, sees a clown juggling his eyeballs, as you get hints on what happened to her mom, or mostly what happened to her. Again, that's left very vague.
Yeah. A lot of this conversation I'm having now reminds me of one of my favorite lessons I learned from one of my fiction teachers in my creative writing classes in college. And she said, in nonfiction, right, like if you're doing nonfiction, you have the luxury of just like putting something in because it happened, because like that's your reason. But in fiction, if you're writing a fictional plot like this movie is, you don't have the luxury of just putting something in for no reason. You know what I mean? Because it looks cool or whatever. Like you can't, like you have to justify every scene that you write. Otherwise, the audience is going to be like you and me, saying like, "Okay, why was that there?" Because everything has to mean something. It has to be there for some reason. Otherwise, it's just fluff that should have been cut out.
No,
sometimes the reason can be this is cool and it sets the scene. Cool. Show us 3 seconds of that. Give us a little tidbit of lore. Awesome. But I feel like a lot of this was just fluff because it was supposed to be cool and there was no fucking reason. But we were lacking reason for a lot of things we wanted.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And so the whole thing, I feel like it's just so random with its decisions. I feel like even I'm surprised that the Cenobites, whenever they encounter Kirsty the first time, they're like, okay,
we'll change the puzzle to something else. Then we'll let you go.
But it did lead to one of my favorite lines in the film, which is,
we have an eternity to explore your flesh.
Or something along those lines. I thought that was a very well-written line. It's just kind of like, I don't know how to feel about the Cenobites just letting Kirsty go, since they already have beef with her, since she's the one that basically snuffed them back to hell whenever they were trying to get at her, that they're like, Nah, let her explore hell.
Well, yeah, let her walk around.
It just kind of makes their own like philosophy a little more muddled on what they do and why they do. And I
Yeah.
understand plot reason wise is like, oh, you know, we need to have Kirsty still discover hell. How are we going to do that? Let's have the Cenobites be okay with it because they know she's trapped here.
Right.
So I felt like that was definitely confusing, which leads me to back to a bullet point with Dr. Chenard, which I've been purposely holding off. So Julia pushes him into a box, even though he's hesitating about, you know, what he's done and that he wants to basically chicken out.
Mm-hmm.
He's in too deep though. So whenever he's shoved into the box, it's kind of a cool scene seeing him get stabbed with needles and cut up and everything else, which is like the process of the Cenobite, because we see at the beginning of the film Elliot Spencer, aka Pinhead, is opening the box in his camp, and you see how he turned into Pinhead at the beginning. So I thought it was cool. So it also helps add illusion to what's going on there. And again, I feel like there's some really cool written lines in this film, like whenever Dr. Chenard exits the box and pulls out, and he's like,
To think I hesitated.
you know, it's a cool line. But then he just looks so goofy.
He looks really dumb.
So stupid. And again, there's like cool allusions to it, like that tentacle thing he has. It mirrors the operation tool he was using at the beginning of the film, like the drill, everything. So I felt like, you know, oh, that's clever doing that. But then he just ends up being super goofy. It's like, it reminds me, oh my God, I can't believe I'm mentioning this. Episode 9 with Palpatine.
Yeah.
Just
I can see
hanging
that.
there.
Oh, yeah, where he's got the fucking
Yes.
GLaDOS crane and everything.
Yes, that's exactly what it reminded me of. And I'm just like, I hate this.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate this.
Yeah.
And so then he becomes the antagonist of the film. And that's only because Julia is sucked out of her skin
Yeah.
in hell because
Yeah, you know, that was one of the weirdest scenes to me too, where it was just disorienting of what the fuck was happening, where they were all getting sucked into the abyss or whatever.
Yeah.
And like fucking for whatever reason, like Kirsty's hanging on and then Tiffany's hanging on, and they're like blowing in like opposite directions for part of it. And then Julia just walks in and she's like not even bothered by the wind. And then whenever they transition to another camera angle, she is all the same. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
what? What's the logic here? What the fuck's going on? And it's not until it's not until Tiffany grabs her hand that she just slips out of her flesh. And
yeah, which I feel like is very anticlimactic for Julia, because I felt like Julia was both figuratively and literally killing it throughout the film. Like I felt
she
like
was cool.
yeah, definitely a lot of cool moments. Like I do like that whenever she is like all fleshy, and they spend a little bit of long time, but I don't mind it
I like
wrapping her up.
Yeah.
I feel like it reminds me kind of like Bride of Frankenstein levels or stuff like that.
When she's like evolving, you know what I mean? It's like, because she starts and she looks really monstrous, obviously. She crawls out of a fucking mattress and like sucks the life out of this dude that's covered in maggots. It's like disgusting, right? And, you know, you don't even know she can talk until she says, help me, or whatever. And the doctor decides to help her. And she slowly starts becoming more and more sentient and human in herself. And she's cool, and she's wearing this, like, white suit for part of it, and she's just, like, I would have loved to seen her, like, if this was a modern movie with modern effects, I would have loved to seen her just, like, female titan the fuck out of some people. That's what she reminded me of, you know? Just like, we see all these fleshy, horrible, tortured monsters, and she's the one that's, like, still with it, and still has her personality, and still can seduce people, and I would have loved to seen her just beat the shit out of somebody. Like,
yeah, for sure. And
that's what she did in the first one. She killed a bunch of men. You know what I mean? I would have loved to have seen her be like, all right, I went on a killing spree, and then I got betrayed, and now it's my turn to do some revenge, and did my hyperbolic time chamber in hell, and now I'm a kick-ass villain. But no, she just falls out of her skin.
Yeah. And the bad thing is, too, is that she did kill a lot of people. They had that scene where Dr. Chenard is bringing people over, and she's, like, sucking the life out of the back of their skull there. Even poor Kyle gets his little skull sucked.
Right.
completely dry, which is funny because nobody ever talks about Kyle as soon as he dies by Julia's
he's
hand.
just completely dropped from the entire like plot script, everything. They're just like, all right, he served his purpose.
Like, not even like Kirsty going, where's Kyle?
Yeah.
She's just like, okay, got this going on.
Yeah, now that I think about it, she doesn't even know that he dies per se, right? Because because she walks into that room where he was. But she doesn't even see his corpse or anything. So.
Yeah, amongst all the shriveled corpses that are there, so it didn't make the room look cool. But again, it's like Julia's on a killing spree, even to the point where she enters Frank's hell, which I don't know why she wouldn't have been able to do it beforehand. I guess she wasn't strong enough. Maybe. Yeah. Again, it just kind of depends on how she's able to find it if hell is so vast and big.
Right.
I don't know, reasons. And so then she decides to get her revenge on Frank for backstabbing her, which makes sense. But
which was cool and I liked it. I just felt like it was paced wrong.
Yes, exactly. I definitely feel like that. Again, I feel like the one thing we could repeat is lots of cool concepts, poor execution.
Right.
I feel like that's this film's biggest fault, is that it has cool ideas but just fails to deliver it appropriately. It's like, again, seeing someone turn into a Cenobite to become a huge monster, cool idea.
Yeah.
Execution, not so great. And I don't know how to feel about this one scene in particular. It's the scene whenever, Kirsty and Tiffany see Dr. Chenard is torturing all the patients to open the lament configuration and experimenting on them just because he's sadistic. Again, he's become a Cenobite. That's what he derives pleasure from. And then she heads into a room, and then, wouldn't you know, it's the Cenobite gang waiting to be like,
yeah, we're here for you. You can't talk yourself out of this time.
And then she talks her way out of it this time just by handing a photo.
Because she collected the photo earlier.
No bargain, just information.
She's like, I'm listening.
Yes. And so I don't know how to feel about it. I like the idea of Pinhead realizing that, he thinks that he's like this Cenobite. And maybe he's been around for so long that he forgets who he was and accepts as a new identity. Maybe that's a reason why he doesn't remember.
And they
initially
talked about, they made sure to make the Cenobites say, like, we have been here forever, like, we are eternal or whatever. And then, for her to be like, no, I found a picture of you from like a decade ago.
But as we see with Dr. Chenard, it lends stuff where he's like, he remembers him hesitating becoming a Cenobite. So it's one of those things, I guess, where you're in the role for so much, kind of like what was it? Stanford experiment? Is that what it is? Like
Stanford
the one
prison experiment?
Yes, the one where they're assuming these roles for so long that they just start to believe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
They
kind
get
of
carried away.
Yeah, I wonder if that's what happens with the Cenobites, because just the reason why they wouldn't initially remember and they believe they've been here for hundreds of years. That's my only reason, because clearly Dr. Chenard remembers and he was turned into a Cenobite, I assume, the same way the other ones were. So that's kind of an interesting idea, but I don't know, just them also willingly turning on the other Cenobite, Dr. Chenard.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why they did necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay, thank God. I was trying to sweat. I'm like, am I going to be really dumb and miss a big point? And I've seen this film twice.
No, I guess it's just because they realized they were humans, and so humans should be against the Cenobites. Is what I gathered, but it just happened so quickly, and there wasn't any like vocalization about that, or really any acting. They were just like, oh, we are human, okay, and then they just fucking die.
Yeah, like I guess all of them remember that they were human, and that I guess whenever they are killed off one by one by Dr. Chenard, they revert back to their human forms, which I guess, again, it's kind of cool to see what they looked like pre-Cenobite, but at the same time, I feel like it's like explaining how a magic trick works.
Yeah.
It's more mystical and enticing whenever you don't know how it works sometimes. And it's...
I feel the same way about most like alien movies, where like it's really cool until they show the alien, and then you're like, oh, that's it. I felt that way about like the first season of Stranger Things, where I was like, oh, the demigod, oh, this is cool, and then like once they get to the episodes where they show it, it's just like the quality just starts going down for me.
No, I absolutely agree, and I don't know. Again, it doesn't ruin it. I think it's an interesting idea. Again, great concept, very interesting. Like, what if a Cenobite realized that they used to be human?
Yeah.
And what if they decide to be good guys?
But they just rush it. They rush the whole thing. It's like they realize they fight it. They do another cool concept, which is like Cenobites fighting, and then they all die. And that
I don't know how Dr. Chenard is stronger than the four of them combined. They've been Cenobites for so much longer, and he's only been a Cenobite for like less than a day, and he's already strong enough. So
it's just all of those pivotal things and very monumental and interesting things happen in less than a minute, and so it just by that nature becomes less impactful.
For sure. And that's the other kind of sad thing too, is that whenever it came to the Cenobites, you think like, oh, Cenobite, Cenobite fight, this is going to be cool. And really you just see Pinhead, summon a change, you're like, oh yeah. And then Dr. Chenard with his stop motion tentacles, which I felt like weren't done very well. I felt like the transition wasn't as clean as, say, like the Evil Dead films.
Right.
I felt like they were more choppy.
They were a little rushed.
And so, like, them chopping off the chains, and then Pinhead's like,
well, that's all I got.
and then Butterball, Chatterer, and female Cenobite are just kind of like...
just stand there and die.
They just stand there and die, and I just feel like, again... Even Pinhead, he's like, getting reverted back to being a human somehow, because I guess that's a thing that Dr. Chenard can do as a Cenobite. And then, Pinhead's just looking valiantly like, you're going to have to kill me first or whatever. And then he kills him. And so I'm like, okay, so the coolest part about the Hellraiser films is now gone.
Right.
Gotcha. And so then we're left with this nerd of a Cenobite, because again, I can't stand just seeing his little little body dangling from a tentacle. And then whenever it comes to like them running back to hell to grab the puzzle that Julia had,
right, which is so fucking dumb that like the whole reason that happened, like the most important thing you could be carrying in hell that Kirsty has, she just like trips in one scene, drops it, and then doesn't pick it up.
Yeah, she doesn't pick it up. And then whenever she sees Julia drop with it, she also runs away. So they run back to hell again to go get it, because Tiffany's like, I think we need to solve that puzzle to solve everything.
Right.
And so they get there, and Dr. Chenard is there, and they have this whole thing. Again, I just didn't feel anything whatsoever. And then Kirsty, I guess, gets the idea to where Julia's skin slips into it, which again, I think, nifty concept idea, because she's seen Frank do it before.
Right.
I just don't know about the execution, just how it works. She's like, I'm going to make out with a Cenobite and hopefully distract him long enough to where Tiffany can solve the puzzle.
Right.
And then he's defeated because...
Yeah.
I guess she solved the puzzle and the tentacle just rips half of his head off.
Yeah.
It's just not a lot of answers.
Some Phantom Menace shit. Right.
Yes.
You did the quest. I'm dead now.
For sure. And the only thing is like a Phantom Menace, at least it was like more of a fun ride for me than it was this film. And I feel like it's just moments like this where I'm just like, oh my God. It just makes me want to watch the first one. Yeah, and so I feel like that's just one of the biggest issues I have, is just Dr. Chenard becoming a Cenobite. Again, cool concept, just didn't like how they executed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they just wrapped up the story with both Julia and Tiffany able to leave, I guess.
Yeah.
But it does lead to a post-credit scene. The scene right before the credits where it shows movers going into Dr. Chenard's house. And they see the bloody mattresses.
Which is really funny to me, because they just discovered this bloody mattress in the basement, right? While they're saying they're wrapping up the moving. And there are packed boxes in the basement, but they just left the bloody mattress. And then the mover's like, whoa, get a load of this one, other guy. And he's like, you guys are the only two movers, and you packed this whole office without noticing the mattress covered in blood in the very center.
Yeah. And then it just shows like one of the spinning pillars, which has a lot of things on there. I'm pretty sure I see Pinhead's face. I think I see Julia's face, And then the one scene that I probably has gotten the biggest laugh out of the entire time we've done podcast episodes is two skeletons humping each other.
And they're not full sized either. They're like mini, like 1 foot tall skeleton hanging, and it's just like fucking boning.
Yeah, and aren't they grunting as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some noises for sure.
And then it shows the grasshopper dude that turned into a dragon that I thought was Jesus Christ in the first film.
Yeah.
And he's just there and is, I don't know.
He says, "What's your pleasure?"
Yeah.
and then
And he's not even the one that said it.
Right.
It was the merchant at the first film, so it just kind of ended weird.
Yeah, it was sort of a hodgepodge, weird, check out this obscure thing ending,
Yeah.
just like most of the movie.
I will say, it's not as weird as the first movie where the guy just turns into a dragon, grabs the lament configuration, and flies off.
Yeah, that was an awful ending.
Nothing will ever top that. Although I say that, and I haven't even seen every single Hellraiser movie. Yeah, so, yeah. Well, I feel a lot more composed talking about the stuff I didn't like, more so than what I thought. Was there any other bullet points you felt like we needed to discuss on terms of Hellraiser 2?
No, really. The only thing I've had stuck in my head is, since you mentioned the Stanford prison experiment. You ever seen Dr. Philip Zimbardo that did that experiment?
I know the dude, but what do you mean seen him?
Yeah, have you like seen a picture of him or a video of him or whatever? He looks like Satan. He looks like what I imagine Satan looks like. While we're talking about Hellraiser, he seems like a nice guy. Because we used to watch these videos in my psych class with Dr. Philip Zimbardo.
Yes, I could definitely.
But look at him. He looks like Satan.
Yes, I could definitely see him being a lookalike like Satan. Like, you know what's weird? This is like a random tangent that I'll get on a bit. Whenever I was younger, I had a friend tell me about Little Nicky, a film by Adam Sandler, and I wasn't allowed to watch it because it was specifically about the devil in hell. My mom's like, you're not watching that.
Right.
And so I had my friend explain the plot of it, and do you know who I typecast as Satan?
Who?
Steve Martin. I don't know what it is. I feel like even now I think about him like, no, he'd be a good devil.
He would do great. Yeah, he'd be fun.
Yeah, so it just, that for some reason, that's just what I imagined in my head because I knew Steve Martin from like other movies, I guess, as a kid. And that's just who I imagined.
Yeah.
So, random fact. Philip Zimbardo, you're Satan. Steve Martin, my Satan.
Yeah.
But yes, that is very interesting that I kind of mentioned that and you thought he looked like Satan.
He'd also make a good Doctor Strange.
Yes. I definitely agree. Although
He's
I do like my boy Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah. He has been a dick. And he is Cucumber Batch. Benedict.
Well, he had been a dick in a Cumberbatch. It's not relevant now.
Right. Okay. On the Cumberpast.
It'd be different if it's is a dick in a Cumberbatch.
That's true. We can forgive being a dick. We've all been there.
Yes, understandable. We've all been in a Cumberbatch. Okay, let's wrap up this episode. Wrap this episode up.
Wrap it up like they wrapped up Judah.
That's so. Oh my god. Do not. So that was Hellraiser 2 from 1988. Why don't we talk about the very next film we're going to do, which I've already given you a little bit of a teaser because I had to clear this with Aaron, just saying, hey, are you good for this? And he's like, yep, I'm good. So the next film that we're going to be watching is not going to be at my house where we watch the film. Instead, we're going to the movies.
Yeah.
Yes. And so do you know of any new horror films that are about to come out? I will give that hint.
Oh, about to come out? No, okay. I was thinking this is the phone one. Whatever.
Yeah, I had thought about it, but then I looked at showings and I saw this and I was like,
what's that one called? Just for the
Black Phone.
The Black Phone. Yeah. Okay. That was gonna be my guess.
Yes, and so I had thought about it, but then whenever I was looking up upcoming horror films because I wanted to try something new and go to the movies, I saw this and I was like, oh, we have to see this film. So it is by a director that you know, and I assume you like his work.
Is it a new Jordan Peele movie?
It is a new Jordan Peele movie. Have you heard of any new Jordan Peele movies coming out?
I have. I'm trying to remember the title of it. It's like a one word, right?
Yep, it's one word. And
because I watched Get Out, and I watched whatever the one with the scissors was. What was that one called?
That was Us.
Us, yeah. Yeah, no, what is this one called? It's like is it monosyllabic?
It's like a slang version of confirmation word.
Oh, it's like yep or something, but it's not that. It's
Opposite.
Like, nope. No.
Yep.
Nope. Nope.
Yep.
No,
It's nope. It's nope. Yeah. It's one of those things that I was like, oh God, I don't remember my English terminology for words. So I'm like, it's a casual word for confirmation. But yes, the film is Nope. So definitely be sure to stay tuned for that, as we're going to be Poppin the Scary for the first time at the movie theaters with Jordan Peele's Nope.
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 Poppin the Scary goes to the movies.
Yep.
Woo! Let's all go to the movies. Let's all go to the movies. Let's all go to the movies.
I need some water.
And popcorn.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're Poppin the Scary.